Welcome this morning, Ms. Lebron-Dykeman. We are ready for your opening remarks.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Justice Wiggins and Commissioners. I'm once again honored to speak with all of you. I've met with most of you on more than one occasion, and of course I was here last summer for the public interviews. So I hope to keep my opening remarks short, but I would like to emphasize a few things that I think help differentiate me from the other well-qualified applicants. Unlike many of the other candidates, I'm not a native Iowan. I was raised in New England and lived in Northern and Southern California, but I long ago made the conscious decision to make Iowa my home. Even this past winter, when I was home over Christmas break, I was speaking with one of my aunts who asked me the question, when are you moving home? And I had to remind her that I long ago made Iowa my home. I was educated at the University of Iowa College of Law. I've taught at both Iowa Law and at Drake. I clerked for Judge Pratt in the Southern District of Iowa, and I've practiced here for 17 years. I've represented Iowans, individuals, small, medium, and large corporations, and Iowa nonprofits as well. My wife and I have spent our outside of career work volunteering regularly for citizens in Iowa, hoping to help improve the lives and careers of Iowans. And I'd be honored to have the opportunity to serve on the judiciary of my adopted state. I also believe that my education and professional experiences are the right fit for this court. As the court is aware, as this commission is aware, the Court of Appeals is a high volume court. They handle over 1,200 cases a year, which means that for the vast majority of litigants, the buck stops there. Their decisions are finally adjudicated by the Court of Appeals. It also means that often the jurisprudence that's relied upon by the courts, and by litigants, and by lawyers is actually decided by the Iowa Court of Appeals. Thus, it's imperative that these judges have extensive research and writing experience so that they can issue well-reasoned decisions that are clearly understandable. In college, I was trained as an educator, and I vividly recall that my professors placed a strong emphasis on plain language, oral and written communication. And this is something that I've strived for throughout my career as an educator teaching 4th grade, my career as a practicing lawyer, and as a law professor. In fact, I was initially hired at my firm specifically to write briefs so that I could help transform complex inventions into something that's easily understandable by judges who might have no science or engineering degrees. And though my practice quickly expanded into all facets of litigation, I've never lost my love of research and writing. Whether I'm working on briefs for district and appellate courts or writing articles to educate lawyers and clients. And over the years, I've had many clients and others thank me for making those complex matters understandable to them. I would use my many years of legal research and writing experience to help ensure that any opinions I authored would be easy for Iowans to understand. Second, I believe that having diversity of practice on the bench, on an appellate bench, is important. And with the departure of Judge McDonald, there's no sitting judge, as I understand, that has a business law background. As my intellectual property law practice includes other business law claims, including trade secret misappropriation, breach of contract, interference with prospective business advantage, unfair competition, and consumer fraud type claims, I maintain that balance on the Court of Appeals. Third, my law practice is perhaps unique in that due to the difficulty of the factual and legal issues we handle, I nearly always work as part of a team. That same collaboration and collegiality that's needed to manage complex litigation is undoubtedly needed when adjudicating as part of a 3-person panel when deciding these appeals. Working in this atmosphere for much of my career, I've learned the importance of simultaneously being decisive in my own decisions as well as being willing to listen to variant viewpoints and to work respectfully even when we disagree. While judges may not always agree, and there will always be dissenting or concurring opinions, Iowa citizens are more likely to respect the judiciary and the decisions when the judges openly respect one another, the litigants, and the lawyers in the courtroom. I assure you that I would put forth all the necessary effort to handle the extensive caseload of this court while always respecting the lawyers and litigants, the judicial staff, my colleagues, and all Iowa citizens. And I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gray.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your application. My question is this. It's been suggested to us by some folks who call us that we should look primarily at folks who've been on the Iowa, either judges or district associate judges for this position, because so much of what they do is looking at decisions from Iowa district court judges. You're not a judge. How do you handle that question?
Not. Yes, certainly. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I think I'd say it this way. I believe that, in fact, these are in many ways different skill sets for a district court judge and an appellate court of appeals judge. Outside of my practice of law and volunteering, I'm a runner, and I liken this to the difference between sort of a sprint and a marathon, the fast twitch versus slow twitch muscles. In a district court setting or an associate district court setting, everything is very fast-paced. It is quick decision-making in the moment, sitting from the bench. On the opposite side, the Court of Appeals is deliberative, contemplative, and looking at things in a much more lengthy decision-making. The district court makes many decisions every day. The Court of Appeals is analyzing decisions every day, but in a quiet, reserved setting. Judge Pratt used to say that sitting on the bench of the federal district court, which is far different from the state district courts, that it was like being in a monastery, that much of what you're doing is contemplative, deliberative thought in the background without any litigants or lawyers in front of you. And I think that is something that is different. It is actually more likened to my practice, where much of what I do is contemplative and deliberative, sitting in my office, not in front of a court, not in front of a jury, and not in those kind of quick decision-making matters.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Horbach. Ms. O'Brien.
Thank you. I have two questions,
Sure.
and the first one is, my stereotype view of patent litigation is Google against Facebook, or, you know, the titans in cases that go on for years and years between big business.
Mm-hmm.
Has your experience included representing small businesses, individuals, and can you tell how that might be different? My second question is, can you please tell us about the Women's Prison Book Club?
Sure, absolutely. So in answer to your first question, I represent across the spectrum. In fact, my litigation practice, I would say I have, right now, I have cases that do go on for years. I've been representing a client right now in Iowa business for the last 5 years in a litigation, but it's a 4-person business against a very large defendant. So I'm representing the small guy against the big guy. I've represented individuals in patent and trademark cases as well. So I represent across the spectrum. I don't just represent large businesses. And I think actually in Iowa, a lot of our litigations are between small business and a large business, or between 2 small businesses, or between 2 individuals. I think that stereotype of the large Google versus Facebook is more likened when you're working, for example, when I used to work at Morrison and Foerster. There my clients were generally very large companies against very large companies, but that's not my experience in my practice here in Iowa. With respect to your second question, The Prison Book Club is a wonderful, wonderful organization that was set up actually with Judge Paulson, worked with the folks at Mitchellville Prison and set up something. Originally, I guess Judge Paulson had worked to help get a library and children's play area at Mitchellville to encourage families to come and have a safe space when they visit their parents that are, or their mothers that were imprisoned there. And then the warden reached out and asked if we could do something else as Polk County lawyers and judges. And so we go over, women from the community, lawyers and judges from the community go over every 2 weeks to Mitchellville, and we have a book club with women that are interested in being involved there. And we've learned that, I mean, I've certainly learned many things that I didn't expect with respect to the prison population and their experiences, and how articulate they are. And, you know, everybody makes mistakes, and they recognize they're there for a reason. But I think it's given them a lot more respect for lawyers and judges. I think on the flip side, it's given us a better understanding of people who are imprisoned.
Mrs. Robert?
Good morning. This is
Good morning.
kind of a follow-up to Mr. Gray's question. You know, if you're one of the two selected for the Court of Appeals positions, not currently sitting on a bench, have you thought about what might be your greatest challenges or maybe the steepest learning curve?
So I think that I have thought about that, and I think that the steepest learning curve for myself, although I expect for a lot of people just different types of things, is there are areas of law that I haven't practiced regularly, and so that I will have to get up to speed on those areas of law. My experience tells me that whenever I take on a new case, I have a lot of things that I need to get up to speed on, and so I feel like that is something that I can certainly overcome by hard work and study. So I think that is sort of the largest challenge. You know, things like evaluating things with respect to evidentiary issues. While I've worked most of my cases, not all, but most of my cases certainly are on the federal side, but, you know, rules of evidence aren't that different between state and federal. I have to study the nuances, but I think that there's enough that's there that are similar as in there.
Ms. Conover?
Your work, I am assuming, is tremendously intellectually challenging, based on my stereotype as well of intellectual property matters and litigation. And I would imagine on the Court of Appeals, while it's also tremendously challenging work, it may be challenging in a little bit different way. Doing de novo review, as Judge Barrows mentioned, of juvenile court matters,
Right.
family law matters, trying to evaluate heartbreaking facts for families
Right.
that don't fit neatly into Iowa law.
Yeah.
Have you determined that that will be satisfying work for you, given your, again, intellectually challenging career path to date?
Absolutely. I think 100% it will be a challenge to look at things in a different way, but I love a challenge, number one. Number two, there are things like family law that, you know, I actually, although briefly, started my career with that. So I did work in that area at some point. Feels like now, many, many years ago. But, and also the first appellate brief that I ever drafted, I spent a semester for my third year at Iowa Law. I spent a semester working for the Youth Law Center here in Des Moines, and so the first appellate brief I ever drafted was on a termination case. So I do have some experience with that. As a teacher, I dealt with those types of issues, termination issues, family abuse issues, and so I do have some experience with that as well. I absolutely think that for me, having a new challenge and something that is certainly different from what I do, but I think it would be, without a doubt, satisfying and exciting to learn new things and participate in this.
Mr. Bloom?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Goodman?
No questions, Your Honor, thank
Ms. Diekma?
I appreciate the fact that you've adopted Iowa despite our winters.
I know. This year I questioned it.
Everyone did. Born and raised here, I did. So when we're talking about your practice, though, when I noticed, and one of the things that I think is important is that you've actually had the opportunity to practice in other jurisdictions other than Iowa. And please tell the commission if you think that that will help you as a Court of Appeals judge in understanding maybe how other court systems might view issues.
I think it will. I think that having, I think diversity is founded in many areas, and having practiced in multiple states around the country, having, state courts and federal courts around the country, looking at laws that might be interpreted slightly different in different areas, I think is helpful just for generalized background. Obviously, our jurisprudence is Iowa cases, and our Constitution is the Iowa Constitution, but having the ability or the experience of looking at other areas and other states' ways of doing things and other jurisprudence, I think will definitely give me a different and unique perspective that I can help share with the others on the bench.
Thank you.
Ms. Sinclair?
No questions.
Mr. Sukup?
Good morning.
Good morning.
A few years ago, you wrote an article on China's revised trademark laws. Are they making progress?
You want a free legal opinion?
Are they making progress? I think it's debatable. It's a tough country for enforcing trademark and patent laws over there.
Thank you.
Mr. Bevel?
No questions.
Mrs. Law?
No questions.
Mr. Diaz?
So the first three applicants this morning are judges who have essentially told us that we've got a lack of applicants at the district court level. We're seeing less and less. Couple of questions from that for you, since you're not a judge. One, have you applied for state district court positions? And secondly, what drawbacks are there for high caliber private practice or public service lawyers to get onto the district court bench? What obstacles or what difficulties can explain why we're seeing less and less people applying for those positions?
So with respect to the first question, yes, I have. And in fact, while I think there's been somewhat of a challenge of understanding how my federal practice fits with an appellate practice or appellate bench here, I think that's actually a harder hurdle for me in the district court, in the sense that, I'm not in a courtroom every day. And district court judges, they're in the courtroom every day. It is much more fast-paced, and I think that that's been a challenge for me personally when I have applied and not been selected. As for why with respect to the other, I think that the answer might be speculative. I can only speak, to what I would perceive are the issues. Is the judges are definitely, every time I have talked with state court judges, they're very overworked. They're sometimes, the Polk County judges have had issues with just the setup of the building and the difficulty in managing the caseloads that they have. The income, I think, for a lot of for people going onto the bench, I think in a lot of situations, the income is you're taking a decrease in an income to go on the bench, and so you have to make that determination of whether you're at a position in your career that you can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger?
No questions.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes, thank you. In your opening remarks, you stated that you have chosen Iowa to be your home. What factors have made you choose Iowa?
Predominantly the people. It's not the weather. But I'm not sure I love the winter weather. I do actually like the summer weather, but it's not the weather, but it's primarily the people. When my family comes to visit, they always remark on just how genuinely kind people are wherever we go, whether it's to the grocery store, to farmer's market. People are sincere and kind, and I think that for me, that is the predominant thing I love about Iowa. I like to run and bike, and I like our quiet roads that I can go out on. I think that since the time I actually arrived here back in 2002 and moved into Des Moines, things like the things that sort of were more difficult for me initially, the number of restaurants and the theater and all of those things, everything is so advanced now. Everywhere you go, there's more restaurants, more art scenes, more music, more theater. So I think we have everything that you can have in a large city on a coast, and yet we have the benefit of people having just been raised to be very kind, true people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lebron-Dykeman. We're out of time, so I want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
The commission will recess now and reconvene at 10:40. Please be prompt so we could continue going. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Kathy, I think